You should believe in yourself regardless of what you own or don't own. People have bought into the idea that if they attain certain things, they're going to feel better about themselves. And when they arrive there and they've attained those things, discover that actually it hasn't changed how they feel about themselves.
What is confidence, first of all? What is it?
Confidence essentially is... So then when you buy those things and you acquire those things and you chase those things and you spend a lifetime chasing those things, I mean, I did the same thing. I used to log onto the bank account just to see if it was real. It was still there, and it was there. And yet I still felt, it wasn't real. I didn't feel like in myself. Everybody wants to be free, right?
Yes.
To feel free.
To feel free.
And that's what confidence really is.
I get messages all the time asking me how I went from $100,000 in bad debt to a $13 million portfolio. By watching this show every week, I will share exactly how I did it, how I achieved it, and the lessons that I've learned along the way. So do me a favor and please subscribe to our channel. It's simple, it's free, and it helps keep the show going for you. This is where you eat and we talk about changing the way that you think about money, with insights from successful investors, entrepreneurs, and everyday people taking control of their financial futures. So double check that you're subscribed, and thank you for being part of this journey. Welcome everybody to the Lunchtime Investor Show, where remember, you do the eating and we do the talking. Well, we're going to be talking about something amazing, which is why confidence is not what you think and how to build real, and I mean real, inner power. In order to discuss that, we have an amazing person here today, my good friend Allan Kleynhans. How are you, buddy?
It's great to see you, Marcus.
Or Brew, I should say Brew.
Brew, yes, Brew. I like that you always say Brew.
Yeah, I got that from you originally.
Yes.
Oh, it's brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So let's introduce Allan. I've known Allan for over 26 years now. And for the last 32 years or more, yeah,
about 36 years now.
36 years now, you've been studying psychology, philosophy, human behavior. You're an international speaker, facilitator, master coach, and you're the founder of AWAKEN, which is and I want to talk about this later, a transformational spiritual psychology workshop. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds exciting. Spiritual awakening. Okay. This is not woo-woo stuff. This is deeply researched, right? He's coached CEOs, elite athletes, vets. We love vets. The vets, yeah, and major global brands. So what we're going to be talking about today is, listen, confidence, right, isn't something that you perform. It's something you build by mastering your inner world. This is what we read from your website. I'm not quite sure. Tell me, what is confidence, first of all? What is it?
Confidence essentially is self-belief.
Self-belief.
It's believing in yourself.
Yeah.
If you look at the root word of confidence from Latin is to confide in oneself.
And is that confidere?
Yeah, and you can also confide in others, can't you? So you have confidence in the people that you love, in your partner, your children, your work colleagues, etc. And but really, essentially, it's belief in yourself.
Belief in yourself. Great. I mean, that was already fantastic. The belief in yourself. Okay, belief in yourself.
Which is the thing that most people struggle with.
Belief in themselves. Yeah.
And if you think about it, everybody could do with more confidence,
Well, this is what so we used to go into schools teaching things like compounding and, money pots and stuff. And I thought, I'm going to stop doing this, because what children really need is to learn how to be more confident.
Yes.
How do we do that?
Well, essentially it starts at home, doesn't it? Everything really starts at home, because the first year of your life, the first several years of your life is when you really form your psychology, when you form your belief system, when you form your ideas about yourself and how you're going to show up in the world. So those first few years are essentially important, and it becomes more and more challenging. It's becoming more challenging, I think, because it's harder and harder for parents to meet those essential needs of their kids in the first several years of their lives.
Really? Why?
So if you look at people, generally adults lack confidence in general, I think, and it really starts because of the fact that those first years, the first several years, that is where most of those challenges set in psychologically.
So how can I get my children to be more confident?
Is encouraging them to step into their fears, encouraging them to do things that perhaps scare them, and, encouraging them to take on tasks that perhaps they think are outside of their ability.
That's so interesting, because I'm always pushing, and Madrika's like, oh no, leave them. But I'm pushing. Is that?
And I also think it's also good to remind them that not winning straight off. Not becoming successful straight away, not becoming, not getting a first place immediately is part of the process, because you have to learn how to lose with elegance. You have to learn how to lose with humility.
Right?
Humility. But when losing is just a term, right? Because there is no losing. There's learning.
Right. So for you, eventually winning though.
Eventually achieving your outcome.
Right.
Yeah, eventually achieving what it is you set out to do.
Yeah. And what if somebody didn't have that parent that did that, and so therefore they're not confident right now, and they know it?
Yeah.
Because some people don't know it, right?
Yeah.
But let's say they are self-aware enough. How could they be more confident? How could they become more?
Well, it's in the world that we live in today, it's never been easier for somebody to get their hands on a book. I mean, look at it. We've got a whole pile of books behind us right here, but it's never been easier for somebody to go onto YouTube and, read and, listen to something, absorb a video and get some...
But they're not going to be more confident by doing that, surely.
No, but they can learn the steps, or they can be encouraged by somebody who's teaching them something.
So
So maybe if they didn't have a parent, to come back to your question, if they didn't have that at home initially, they can go looking for that outside of themselves. But I think it has to come from the inside too. Somebody might recognize, okay, I'm lacking confidence. I lack the ability to talk to people. I feel anxious when I'm in social environments. What can I do about that?
So because if nobody's pushing them, they're going to have to push themselves. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. So, we got some of this from you, your website, some of the things you've written, the myth of confidence and why most people chase the wrong version. So we want to talk about that, because that's, it's like when I read that, the myth of confidence, I'm like, because I'm all about, like, people need just to be out of their comfort zones and do things and keep growing.
Yeah.
How unconscious patterns sabotage decision making, right? Even when you know better. So you're doing something like in trading and investing. I know I shouldn't be getting out now, but I do. Like, what is that all about, right? Hopefully you can uncover that. The mechanics of real inner power. I like that, right? And how to access it. And also the mindset shift that really turns fear into clarity. So I'm going to ask you a question, right?
Yes.
You say most people are chasing the wrong kind of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So how should we really define it, and what should we be doing?
What I mean by that is that people have bought into the idea that if they attain certain things, they're going to feel better about themselves. And when they arrive there and they've attained those things, they usually discover that actually it hasn't changed how they feel about themselves, and so it may mask how they feel about themselves a lot more, easily, or just
by having those things.
Yeah, by having those things, it may be, it's easier to mask how they really feel. However, at the end of the day, they know how they really feel about themselves, and they know what they're feeling in terms of their emotional, the emotions that are fired or triggered inside the human body when they find themselves in certain environments where they haven't built a self-belief, a strong, solid certainty inside of themselves, where they're acquiring that certainty or that belief in themselves from things that they've attained or owned.
So you're making a differentiation between the outward stuff as opposed to the inner stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because that's what we sell, don't we? That's what society sells. Buy this, you'll feel like this.
Oh man,
buy this, you'll feel like this.
It's like a bus going by, and then it's just everywhere.
Yeah, so then when you buy those things and you acquire those things and you chase those things and you spend a lifetime chasing those things. I mean, I did the same thing. I chased what I thought success was.
What did you think success was?
Well, I thought success was becoming wealthy, becoming a millionaire.
I mean, you have been. This is interesting. So you have been a millionaire several times, and then you did it again.
Yeah,
I mean, at least twice that I know of, and it's probably more.
Yeah. So and the first time, and I remember when I first started on the journey of personal development, I thought, okay, cool. I read Think and Grow Rich, and I thought, okay, great. I'm going to turn my ideas into tangible assets. I'm going to become wealthy, and I thought and I was aware of. I was aware of what wealth looked like and what it felt like, because my parents hung around with wealthy people and they didn't have money. So they had great jobs, which they used to put me through a great education. However, I was aware of what wealth looked like, nice cars, big houses, because I spent a lot of time in those big houses as a kid. However, coming back to the point I'm making is that when I eventually arrived at a place and I thought, wow, I've made it, and I used to log onto the bank account just to see if it was real. It was still there, and it was there. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, And you had a great lifestyle, I was married at the time, 2 beautiful young kids, great business. We were based in South Africa at the time, and we're doing exceptionally well. And yet, I still felt, it wasn't real. I didn't feel like in myself. It's sometimes it's hard to explain, but it's a false sense of significance, It's a false sense of confidence. It's a myth. It's okay, because you have to continuously build that in yourself, and and confidence comes from, really, if I think about it, self-belief. You should believe in yourself regardless of what you own or don't own.
Okay, so just believe in yourself, confidence.
Yes.
Regardless of what you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's say it another way, rather than believe in yourself. You should value yourself regardless of what society says you should own or not own. You should still value yourself. And we don't do that for society. We don't do that for young children. See, that's why we are trained. I mean, we've been selling the idea of success and success at all costs through capitalism for a long time now, for hundreds of years. And so the challenge is that people they're duped, aren't they? Because then they arrive at a place and they're unhappy. How many people do we know our age and older who have built a business, successful business, who've got money in the bank, investments, properties, etc., and they get to 60 or 55, 60 and they're unhappy.
Right, but there are people that don't have that are unhappy as
well.
So I'd rather, if you gave me the choice, I think I'd rather be rich and unhappy.
Absolutely, but
if I had the choice.
Absolutely, and what I'm saying is, people could probably avoid those kinds of deflated experiences, arriving somewhere and thinking, "Oh gosh, I'm still not happy."
But Tony talks about
on the way.
Talks about that. What about just as soon as you sense you're getting near your goal, then you have another one.
Yeah.
The challenge with that is that it never ends.
Yeah.
So what's the destination?
Well, I think he also says that and I think it's important to say this, is that you have to also enjoy the process. It's great to have outcomes and goals, of course, because progress makes us feel alive, and especially if you're working towards a greater goal, that is serving the greater good. At the same time, you also have to enjoy the process and recognize that it is the process where all the joy is. It's not the outcome, because when you're chasing the outcome and you focus only on the outcome, believing that you're going to feel a certain way when you get there, then you're going to miss a lot of the joy on the way. And people do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They miss a lot of joy on the way.
Yeah, I agree with that. What you're talking about, the outward as opposed to the inner, is that the ego?
Well, ego has a part to play, absolutely. But ego, if you think about ego, for the most part, ego is the wounded self, is the wounded part of us.
The wounded self.
Yeah, the wounded self and the wounded part of us that feels that it's separate and it is alone, and therefore it must compete, and it has to, it has to do certain things in order to feel recognized.
Is that where that comes from? That the winning, I have to win.
Yeah, I think so, and also because of the way we were brought up and what we are conditioned to believe.
At my school, it was very competitive.
Yeah. And I think that's why there's been a major swing away from that, and now I've got friends of mine who are looking to try and get their young 4-year-old into the next school, and it's either very competitive, where it's individuals, or it's the other way completely, where it's too touchy-feely.
But yeah. If you're third, you still get a medal.
Exactly.
Well, okay, fine. Fourth, fifth, sixth, still get something.
Yeah. Everybody wins. Yeah.
So what's the balance there?
Well, it's not an easy answer to that question, because I think I've always encouraged parents to encourage their children to learn outside of the schooling curriculum, like I've done for my kids and like you've done for yours. So not only are they learning what they're learning at school, when they come home, they should also absorb other information that they're not learning at school, that they don't get exposed to at school, which gives them the rounded, well-rounded view of the world. And
so know when to be competitive, but know when not to be competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay.
Yeah. And also to remind everybody who's listening here, the root word of the word, competition is to conspire together. So, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because the next thing I was about to say was, if you don't win, then I don't win. We should all be winning together. And at the same time, to compete means to bring out the best in each other, and to do it on with camaraderie, rather than, this dog-eat-dog world, and there's only so much left, right? And so we have as a result of that, there's a lot of people that are just left, to the wayside. And,
but it doesn't matter where you go. Like at each level, there's always going to be, so you could say, we're going to do something together, and that's great. But then at the next level, we'll be going to be competing another company. But let's just say we do something together as a company. Now you're competing against another country. There's always competition.
Of course it is, absolutely. However, I think it really comes down to the intention behind the competition. And I think, I just really believe in doing things for the greater good, because I think that we are here. And later on, when we come to, discussing AWAKEN, I do really believe that what we see, everything we see is an illusion. It's for the most part, life is an illusion.
That's what Deepak, a couple of weeks back went to see Deepak Chopra, and that's what he basically says.
Yeah, for the most part, life is an illusion. We're chasing things, and we're going to get to the end of our life and think, what was that about? You know what I mean? And when we
I'm
move,
starting to think that now.
when we move through the veil and we go back to where I believe we're going back to, we'll sit there and think, wow, okay, next time I go around, next time I'm there, I'm going to make it far more meaningful. I'm going to make it far more...
Right. But then you'll forget that, come back, and
you do
exactly
forget
the same thing.
Absolutely, you do forget.
Flip a neck.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about building real inner power, right? So we need to understand the foundation. The foundation is what, would you say?
I think the foundation is love.
The foundation is love.
Yeah, it has to
not
be.
Self-awareness.
Well, the two are very closely linked. They combine, and it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I think, to become self-aware is to recognize that the self is not what we think it is or what we've been taught it is. The self is, especially if you talk about, there's different levels of the self, right? You've got the ego self, which thinks it's separate and it's on its own, and therefore it's competing and it's trying to win love. It's trying to win, validation. It's trying to win recognition. And it remains that way as long as it is wounded. And there's this, that creates the false self, right? And there are these false unconscious beliefs that support the false self, which always create the illusion of separation, which is, if you look at the world at large, that's what we are living.
It sounds like, when you're describing that, this is deep stuff. It's almost like a baby. A baby is like, and it needs that, right? Without other people, it would actually perish.
Of course.
But then when you maybe become more self-aware, maybe love yourself, you feel more complete, then maybe you don't need to compete as much.
Well, it's interesting you say about the baby, because of course, at the beginning, a baby is completely dependent on its carers, right? And then when it arrives at that age, which is anywhere between, let's say, a year to 18 months, or maybe let's say a year to 2.5 years, it begins to individuate, and each infant is different. And as it begins to individuate, it starts to see, I'm actually separate. I'm not joined to my mother. I've got autonomy. And then usually the first word it learns is no, right? And then it just starts saying no all the time. So, and then the identity is developing, right? The identity becomes developed. And so it is then incumbent on the parents to say, okay, what is it do I want? What foundation would I like to create in my child's psyche so that they grow up to be a functional adult? What parents really want for their children. We're going off in all kinds of directions now, right? But what parents really want, I don't know if you'll agree with me. I think you will. I think what you and Madrika really wanted for your kids right at the beginning, just like I wanted for mine, was for my kids to be confident, independent, functioning adults, and with a good view of the world where they can interact with people in a really powerful way.
Mm-hmm. But first and foremost, healthy.
Yes,
and then
of course. Well, that's part of it, right? Healthy.
So this whole thing about being self-aware, because most people think that they are self-aware, but are they? But few people truly are. And I want to explore that a little bit, because most people say, "Oh, I'm fine," and let's not forget, as the Oracle said, knowing yourself.
Yes.
Is the secret. Yes. Then you know what to say yes.
Yes.
And
I think a good place to start with that is that if you are truly self-aware, then you'll know and you'll be happy to admit that you spend most of your time unconscious.
Yes.
And it's about being aware that you're unconscious. And so that when things happen and you get triggered, it's the ability, being self-aware is the ability to pause and say, oh, what's going on inside of me right now?
I think we're going to talk about that. Absolutely. So the reaction comes up, but then what do you do with that reaction? Let's have a look at this video here. You can take some notes if you want. But if you, I don't know who this is, Robert Greene.
Robert Greene, yeah. He wrote some really great books.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Have you read the books?
Yeah, I've got them. They're brilliant.
Okay. Have you got them or have you read them?
I've got them and read them, yeah.
Okay, cool. Distinction. Got them and read them. Okay, so let's watch this video of Robert Greene.
If you don't have self-awareness, you can't possibly change yourself. Everybody wants to think they can change themselves. That's why self-help books sell so well. A lot of that, I believe, is nonsense, a lot of what's written, because it's not realistic. You're not seeing who people really are. You're not digging underneath and getting at what really motivates human behavior. So I wanted a very realistic, brutal look at the human animal. It's not all negative. We have some positive traits. But once you realize, oh, I am capable of feeling envy. Oh, I am irrational at times. Oh, I have a dark side. With that awareness, you can actually finally start to change yourself.
Okay, what do you think about what
I agree
you
with
just
that. I agree.
Which bit?
I agree with all of it, really, because you have to be aware of the fact that you do have a shadow, that you do.
Whoa, it's the shadow, sorry.
Well, the side of yourself that sabotages yourself. You know, the shadow side of ourselves is the part of us that gets in the way. You know, like
Is that like the voice, the inner voice? Is that what it is?
Well, your inner voice is your inner critic, is something different completely. But, you know, what Robert's saying here is that, you know, self-aware people are aware of the fact that they do have a side of themselves that shows up and can cause problems, can be sabotaging. You know, for instance, you know, you mentioned envy, you know, being irrational. You know, for me, you know, there's a part of me that complains. So, you know, I call it my favorite flavor of suffering, because if I'm complaining, I'm suffering, obviously.
My favorite flavor of suffering. Okay.
Yeah, is complaining, because I notice that I do have a part of me. And if you think about, you know, parts therapy, you know, we have been fractured at different parts in our lives. And so, you know, I've spent 36 years trying to understand myself and going back to instances in my past, regression therapy and all kinds of stuff, going back and remembering what happened to me at different ages, you know, 3 years of age, 4 years of age, 5 years of age, and thinking, wow, you know, and recognizing that I may have been fractured at that point, and then there's a part of you that stays there, right? And you remain a 4-year-old, even though you're growing up. And so that's why it's...
Oh, hold on. So it fractures, so it stays.
Yeah.
You carry on, but this part doesn't change.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And then you have another fracture, so now there's two parts.
Yeah. So therefore you can say that your average intelligent, successful, you know, using that term loosely because it's subjective, 35-year-old, 40-year-old, 45-year-old, 50-year-old, put them in an environment where they get triggered, they'll act like a 5-year-old.
In certain circumstances.
Yeah, certain circumstances. We all have the capacity to act like a 5-year-old or 4-year-old in certain circumstances.
But is this good or bad? Does it matter?
Well, it depends what the cost is.
Oh.
Depends on the effect
in
of
a
that behavior.
relationship, and suddenly
It depends on the effect that behavior is having. However, you have to have the ability to pause and say, oh, I'm acting like a 5-year-old right now. What's missing?
So you've got to be conscious. You've got to catch yourself.
And that's what self-awareness really is recognizing, oh, I'm behaving like a 5-year-old now. What's missing? What need is not being met in me right now? What need?
So is that what you need to ask yourself? What need is not being met right now?
I think it's one of the questions you could ask. I think it's a very powerful question because, as Robert Greene just said there, you know, human beings have needs, you know, and the deep emotional needs that are driving us. And those needs are what? Avoiding fear, feeling safe. You know, the reason we want to feel safe is because we are afraid.
Is that pain and pleasure?
Pain and pleasure, yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure. So we do more to run away from pain than we do to run towards pleasure, that kind of thing.
Well, some people do. I think the majority of people do.
Especially at the start.
However, some people are more motivated by pleasure than pain.
Yeah.
So that's why
eventually.
That's why they'll chase pleasure in spite of what they are losing.
Yeah.
In spite of what they are maybe...
I mean, it sounds to me that okay, but so how do you get rid of this fractional stuff then? You said something about regression techniques, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if you look at around now, it's Instagram, Facebook, and all the social media, you know, everybody's talking about healing your inner child and healing your wounds. And you know, I've been doing, you know, inner child work for, you know, a long time. There's many modalities, many different models that you can practice.
Maybe one that people could do right now without needing anybody else.
Well, I think forgiving yourself is really key. You know, I talk about that a lot. It's very important. And also forgiving your parents. That's a very, very important thing. I always tell people there's 3 people you need to forgive in order to begin setting yourself free. Because everybody wants to be free, right?
Yes.
To feel free.
To feel free.
And that's what confidence really is. It's feeling free in your own skin and not worrying about what anyone else is thinking about me. Or am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to do the wrong thing? That's a lack of confidence.
Wow.
So when you have confidence, you don't really worry about that because you're governed by your own internal certainty. And you know that, and especially if you're aware of the fact that if you have good values, and you love connecting with people, and you recognize the ability, or you recognize the importance is a better word I'm looking for, the importance that everyone you meet is on their own journey, and that we are all kind of collaborating especially spiritually. We're collaborating at the same level spiritually. We forget that at the level of being human. So that's why it's such a competition. But we're actually collaborating at a much higher level.
So hold on, who are the three people that you need to forgive then?
Your mother and your father and yourself.
Oh, okay, I was going to say parents. Who are the other two? Okay, mother, father.
Your mom, your dad, and yourself, so you can begin to set yourself free.
What about brothers and sisters?
Well, that obviously, yeah,
What
of
about
course.
the church? What about culture? What about...
Well, it starts with those three people, because you won't be able to free yourself from a hang-up in your mind about somebody else if you haven't first initiated with your parents and yourself, because it becomes easier. If you can forget, because that's your first relationships. Those are your first relationships with your mother and your father and yourself. Yeah. And you learn your relation with yourself through your parents. So if it wasn't, healthy or, whole, then, that's where you set up those initial patterns.
This is good stuff. I mean...
Yeah, it is. It's very important because it becomes pervasive.
Well, I was just
It permeates
this is
everything.
the most probably leveraged activity you could do is to start there.
Absolutely. It permeates everything you do.
Absolutely. So the next strategy to get rich is only going to be as good as you being able to deal with, some of the past stuff. Well, once you start talking about past stuff, it sounds very woohoo, though.
Well,
Was it woo-woo, not woohoo?
I think people have used that term, in times past, woo-woo, etc. However, nowadays, people can't really say that because there's science that backs all of this. It's backed by science.
Yeah.
The studies that have been that have been done over the last decades, the studies that are being done right now, the things that people are discovering about, how the brain has developed, since the beginning of time, and how important it is for us to understand how to use the brain properly, and the reason. And how to use the brain properly really depends on how we use our heart intelligence. The two are linked, and the heart is probably leading the brain by far.
So the heart is the decision maker, not the brain?
Well, the heart, yeah, absolutely. It's, I think that's why the phrase comes from, if you're in your head, you're dead. Because if you're constantly relying on your head, we are head-centric people, as a race. The humankind is egocentric and head-centric.
Is it more Western than Eastern?
Yes.
Did you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Mind-centric. We've forgotten about the heart, and it's, if you think that the heart, neurons first developed in the heart, and then mitochondria pulled neurons into the brainstem, and then the brain only began to develop.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's how it works.
Do you start with a heartbeat?
That's where it starts first. And that's where neurons first establish themselves, neurons. And what are neurons? Neurons are thinking, the energy centers, aren't they?
It's actually, incredible when you think of it that way.
It is. It's fascinating. And what's very interesting is that if we go down a different path altogether, but it's linked to this, is that, around 800 AD is when we began to really deflect away from nurturing as a human trait, and so that's why we don't really nurture ourselves effectively in this world. We don't nurture money effectively. We don't nurture the earth even. We don't nurture, food effectively.
But I sometimes have this thought where if that's the way we're heading, then it must be natural because that's where we're heading.
Well, it is natural. It's a great point you make there. It is natural because it's part of natural evolution, because the brain, if you think about the brain's sole purpose and objective is to make sure that you're safe and that it evolves, that it constantly stays ahead of any threats, right? And so you have 4 different brains, right? But they have developed on top of each other, and they all link together. And as the new brain begins to develop, the old one kind of upgrades slightly. However, those initial primal reptilian, reactions are still there, which is why people react so easily. Yeah. Which is why we still do primitive things to each other.
So what's the key here? So let's say you have a reaction, okay? It's nature. Mm-hmm. Okay, then what? It's to be conscious enough to do what?
To be conscious enough to take a breath. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, the very first thing the very first reaction in a young child or an infant's nervous system is to stop breathing. When it's impacted by something, a loud noise or something, it'll stop breathing. And that's where all disease actually initiates, is a lack of breath. Yeah.
Really?
So over a period of time, people learn to breathe less, and they learn to breathe very less, like a lot less, right? In their higher in their chest. So to become aware when something triggers you, and let's say it's anxiety, anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness, whatever. The first thing I do is I put my hand on my heart and I just take a deep breath. And I exhale longer than my inhale. And I do that 3 times. And then I just say, what's really going on? That's my first question. What's really going on?
Is it to do that, let's say in a boardroom or in a meeting, or you're about to place a trade? Well, that actually is easy, placing a trade. But to do it in front of another person, I don't know whether it's possible to go, just wait. I'm going to do this 3 times. And, but I'm just wondering,
well,
maybe eventually you can just do it internally, no, without them knowing.
Yeah, you could. But in that environment, you might not want to do it 3 times. You might just say to somebody, hold on, let me just take a breath.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Or you'll probably get to the stage where you can trigger yourself.
Yeah, you can through repetition.
And there's nothing wrong with taking a breath. We are breathing.
There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with communication because people are very responsive. So if you, in an environment, you could just take a deep breath and say, let me just center myself. That's a great question. Let me center myself. But also, you're also, by doing that, actually probably shifting their state as well. Of course you are. You're shifting their state like, consciously.
Whoa. Yeah.
You're shifting their state.
They're ready for a fight.
Yeah.
You're like, go, and they go, oh.
And you might, and you could even say, I mean, I've done this with groups in environments like that, in boardrooms. You can even say something like this. You could even say, let's all just take a breath.
That's all.
That feels better, doesn't it? Okay, let's get back to where we were.
If you have that cheeky smile on your face, that would work.
Of course it works, absolutely.
Because you've got to practice that. You've got to master that.
Oh, you've got to practice.
You can't immediately.
Yeah, you've got to practice it at home.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And and it's super interesting because you have a team here, and it's about educating people and saying, listen, I've been doing something that really is working for me, and it's helping me to be more clear. It's helping me to develop clarity faster, and it's helping me to make better decisions. It's also helping me to understand how to get in my own way. And I'm just going to share it with you if that's okay, from time to time. And so then people are aware of it, And then
must come from you first. Though.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah. And then you say, I like to pause and take breaths, deep breaths, because it calms me and it helps me to be more clear.
Yeah. But you got to do it. I can't go out there right now and say, listen, Allan just told me this, and you guys should all do it.
Yeah. No, you can't. Yeah.
Okay.
But you could say, listen, I've just learned something really interesting and I'm going to start trying it. Who's with me? That's a different invitation.
You could do that.
It's a different invitation.
Touch each other, right?
Yeah.
They might say to you, hey, you're not breathing. Okay. Unconscious
And
patterns.
people don't breathe. I'm around people all the time, so I'm very observant. And because I've obviously always studying this, and I was my first client, so I've been practicing this on myself since 88. All these things that I started absorbing and reading about. And I thought, let me try this, because I had one focus in mind, was I wanted to feel better about myself, and I felt terrible about myself. However, when you invite people to try something with you, then it's a better invitation, isn't it?
Do you know what's so interesting is that, some people might be going, for heaven's sakes, but actually, since if you stop breathing, you'll be dead within 3 minutes tops. It actually makes sense that breath is one of the most important things.
It is the most important thing. And if you think about psychology, which is what we're talking about here, essentially, we're talking about psychology, right?
Yeah.
Psyche, the word psyche, the original Greek
is it spirit?
It's the study of life, breath, and soul.
Life, breath, and soul is psyche.
Suke, it was called. Suke. In the original Greek.
Yeah.
Was the study of life, breath, and soul. And they would talk for hours on the study of life, breath, and soul. What is life about? Why are we here? What is breath? What is soul? What is the soul's journey here? Then it began to morph. In the 1650s, they changed it to psyche, and then it became the study of behavior related to
here we go.
Mindset.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it became about, all right, cool, mindset.
What's mindset?
Yeah. And what is mindset about? It's about focusing on a particular point in the future and going for it at all costs.
Yeah.
Talking yourself into it over and over and over.
Costs and conditioning it.
Yes.
Again and again.
And so then feeling gets left behind. Feeling has been left behind.
So these patterns, we can call unconscious patterns, this repetition thing, runs your behavior. Would you agree?
Yes.
Until you make them conscious.
Yeah.
Therefore, the old conditioning actually controls you until you shine a light on it. And once you shine a light on it, then what?
Well, then it's just becoming more and more aware of when it shows up and what triggers it.
Okay, so we were at forgiving. Okay, so it comes up and you just take a breath, maybe put your hand on your heart.
Yeah, and then I always ask myself, what's really going on?
What's really going on?
Yeah, what's really going on inside me right now? What am I really afraid of? What am I fearing right now? What am I afraid of?
If you're really strong enough, you could do that in any environment, including a boardroom.
You could do that anywhere.
If you're congruent with that.
Yes, absolutely. Because
You might shock a few people.
Well, you of course, absolutely. And people are inspired by authenticity. They really are inspired because we are moved by that, because we recognize real when we see it.
I think you're right.
Yeah, even if we don't understand it, we recognize it.
Well, I feel you're right. I think you're right, but I feel you're
Yeah, of course. And also, if you develop the practice enough, you can have do you think it's possible to have two conversations at the same time?
Do I think?
And what I mean by that is you and I can have a conversation right now.
Yeah, you're saying one
open.
thing, I'm saying something else.
And are you having another conversation inside your own head at the same time? Is that possible?
Potentially, yeah.
Of course it's possible, because we're always doing it.
Yeah.
Without even realizing it. So you imagine if you're conscious about that and you can actually have a very directed conversation with yourself, inside yourself, while you are having a conversation outside yourself.
Okay, yeah.
I can remember a very real experience of that, if I can share it.
Sure.
I remember standing in front of the Natal Sharks rugby team. Yeah, my very first presentation to them. And bearing in mind, this is 25, 30 guys, 6'3", 6'5", 6'7", 8 Springboks in the team. And it was my very first presentation. And I was there to teach them a triad. You know what the triad is, right? Tony Robbins' triad, physiology, focus, language.
Yeah.
And I had got this meeting by being really confident and actually just bravado. And, I walked up to the coach, Kevin Putt, who used to play for the All Blacks back in the day. And I just put my hand out and said, "Hi, my name's Allan." I said, "I'm a huge Sharks fan. I grew up in the city. I've just come back from England after being away for 12 years. And I said, I really think I could help the team to get better. You finish at the bottom of the log this season. I can help you to get, back to the top." And I said, "You've probably heard this 100 times. However, you probably haven't heard what I'm about to say." I said, "I'll do it for free." And he looked at me and he said, "You're right. I haven't heard that before." He said, "I have been approached hundreds of times." He said, no one's ever said I'll do it for free." I said, "What's the catch?" He said, "What's the catch?" I said, "No catch." I said, "If they like it, we talk about doing it over an extended period, if they respond positively." And he said, "Cool, you got a deal."
Nothing to lose there.
Yeah, the following week I was standing in front of the whole team, in this beautiful premises, which I'd never been into before. I'd only been in the main stadium. And I was standing up there talking about the triad. And at the same time, I was inside my own head saying, "Oh my God, I'm in front of the Sharks. This is insane. Wow, look who's there. Look at that. Look at that." It's
because you've seen them on TV before.
Yeah, of course. And I've been watching them play in the stadium, right? And I remember I used to go to that stadium all the time in 88 and 89 before I left to come to England. We'd go and watch home games all the time. We'd go in a group of friends. We always sit in the same place every game. And I remember having that conversation with myself while I was completely present with them and talking about the triad. So it is possible. We always
so you were completely present even though you were having another conversation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was fully present in flow. Absolutely. But at the same time, I was aware of the fact that I was, wow, look who it is. Look, I'm standing here. This is amazing. Oh my God, this is brilliant. Thank you, God. I'm here.
Okay, I got to ask now. So did it work?
Oh yeah, it was awesome. We spent we had many sessions throughout the season, and then they ended that season in the Currie Cup final away from home. They lost the final narrowly.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So from the bottom to the top.
Second, yeah.
Wow! Why did?
Yeah, we were in the paper and everything. It was awesome.
Yeah.
No,
that is awesome. Okay, so why do you think that investors repeat the same mistakes even though they know that not to do it? It's like their hand goes out and you shouldn't really be buying that thing, but you do this anyway. And you go, what the? I mean, I even had that conversation with my owner, or I know I shouldn't be getting out. I shouldn't be getting out. Or I should be buying this or whatever it is. Why is that?
The same thing happened to me recently with gold. And
with
gold, I told you I had a funny story for you, and we never got around to telling
you.
Well,
I'll tell you the funny story. You made millions, and then you lost it again.
Yeah. So.
And I want to talk about that.
But coming back to what you said there about why do we do those things when we know we shouldn't? It's a lack of discipline, really. That's what it is. Comes down to. It's a lack of discipline. We don't follow the rules. We know the rules are there. Rules.
Sure, discipline, but that's what you label it as.
Yes.
But
well, you have rules, right? When you teach your students, right?
But you know. So you're having a conversation in your head, right? And you're saying, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing, and then you do it. What the hell? Or grabbing the chocolate, or eating too much. Oh, I really shouldn't. Yes, okay, yeah, I'll have seconds.
Yeah, I think it's because we are betting or bargaining on the fact that we're going to get lucky this time.
Okay. That's where when it comes to the investing thing.
Yeah. This one's, it's going to be lucky this time. I'm going to make it this time.
Yeah.
And then we think, damn, I should have followed the rules. I should just stick to the rules.
What would you say?
And I think also people are in a hurry. They're in a hurry.
No, but what would you say would be the number one thing? Because you said lack of discipline to get their discipline better. What would be the number one kind of like thing to do?
Wow, that is a brilliant question. And I think if I can relate it to, I'll use myself as an example first, and I'll use a friend of mine. So, when I was wanting to be sober and stay sober, I found it difficult to say no. I just couldn't say no. Right? So when I got associated to what it was costing me by not being able to say no, and I really got associated to the pain of that and what it would continue to cost me into the future and what that may cost me ultimately, which would be my life. I'm die ahead of my time, die without, having ever done all the things I want to do. Then by being fully associated to that, I thought, you know what, I can say no. Saying no is a lot less painful than what this looks like in the future if I don't just develop the ability to say no. And then, discipline is just following through on that commitment you make to yourself.
Commitment, not a decision. We always talk about the difference between, like, commitment, we say, is doing the thing that you said you would do long after the feeling in which you said it has gone.
Long after the enthusiasm has worn off.
Yeah. But okay, but you really need to go there to see that pain in the future. This isn't just you got to really
I think that again that links to awareness, because you have to have the awareness to use pain in a powerful way. To use the possible future pain as leverage.
So being but that's a conscious decision.
Yes.
Right. A commitment is even more. Do you think, just changing tack, said, I want to go into this. Do you still drink? Do you drink ever?
Yeah.
You're totally, I never even realized.
Yeah.
I mean, you were healthy.
Yeah.
Because you always like, but you just don't. What? Okay.
I mean, I did, when I got sober in 99, I was teetotal for, a good 5 years. And then I got to a point where I was, celebrating a friend, a birthday, I believe, and they said, hey, why don't you have a beer, And I said, no, I don't want one, because I didn't drink. And I thought, well, I mean, it's my friend's birthday, one beer can't hurt. And so I had a beer, and then I would have the odd beer here and there,
Oh, yeah, so great. So you didn't fall off the way.
No. And then I have done that on occasion over the years, etc. There was a time when I would have the odd glass of wine, etc., things like that, and it wouldn't bother me at all. However, I haven't had a drink.
Sounds like you don't even enjoy it anymore.
I don't. I mean, I don't see the point of it really, actually. And also, I always feel it. I notice it the next day. So
yeah.
And I haven't had a drink for, what do we now, December.
Why did you start drinking?
I haven't had a drink this year, actually. I think I've had one drink this year.
One drink. Why did you start drinking?
Initially. Why do kids drink when they're young? For fun.
So it's that. It has nothing to do with, because you've killed people, right?
Well, yeah, if you say it like that, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've laughed probably because, it still blows me away that, that's a bit of like a, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Listen, I did my duty, I was conscripted, and I did my duty, and I saved some of my buddies I couldn't save. I had a patrol mortar pipe as a military soldier and an RPG-7, and we were at war, and I used them, as I was trained to do, and yeah. So
that wasn't why you started.
No. I began drinking when I was 14, at boarding school, and then you just do it because everyone else is doing it, and you're having fun. You get drunk, you have fun. You have drunk, you have fun. Then by going out, I was getting drunk, and then, but then when I did come out of the military, then I was drinking to numb myself. Yeah,
so, yeah,
and then it was just a tool of getting myself to a place of unconscious quickly.
Yeah, and then you've been through this amazing kind of journey within yourself. Okay, yeah, maybe you were numbing yourself, but now going internally to deal with everything and all the stuff you were talking about, fractional, etc., and so forth. Do you think that most people need to go through this kind of pain? Because they're living in pain, but they're not really aware of it, or they're trying to numb themselves. So they watch a film, they drink something because they don't want to realize that they are actually unhappy. Whereas you had so much pain, you went deep.
Yeah. So your first question: do you think most people need to?
Yeah. Do you think that they need to have more pain in order to start really working on themselves, because they're always having these trigger switches, having a drink. Oh, okay, but nothing's really changed. Oh, let's go and watch a movie just to try and make themselves feel better.
Well, I think that becoming conscious and self-aware, when people become conscious and self-aware, and they might say, okay, what do I really want from my life? What do I really want my life to be about? Because I think you can't become conscious and self-aware and not ask that question, and say, okay, cool. Well, as I'm becoming more self-aware and I'm recognizing, well, what triggers me, and how do I really want to feel? I mean, that's what it was like for me. I when I came out of the military, I locked myself away and just drank myself to sleep every day. I started having nightmares, and I had them subsequently for 9 years until eventually they went away. And actually, what's interesting is I had a few nightmares recently for the first time in years, and again related to combat. However, at the time, I was drinking myself because I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain, and I was very unhappy. I was unhappy as a kid. I was already unhappy as a teenager because I was bullied and I was teased, and I was considered dim. We have that phrase, for people who are not very bright, not academic. I was considered dim. So I was really unhappy. I was an only child. I was left to my own devices a lot of the time. I got up to mischief, got into trouble a lot, and parents were very strict, and early on developed the idea or the belief that I was unloved or not worthy of love. So I was really unhappy. So when I came out of the military, it compounded that. And plus I went to 2 religious schools. So I had a lot of religious dogma shoved in my head from the age of 5. And so when I came out of the military and I began to drink heavily, and I was already smoking marijuana from the age of 14. And then when I came out of the military, I started taking LSD on a regular basis. So I was smoking marijuana, taking LSD, and drinking myself to sleep.
Jeez.
So I was, and plus on top of that, I was confrontational, and I was aggressive, and I was really unhappy, and I was manic depressive, and then extremely over the top in terms of being in your face. So I was diagnosed as bipolar, severe bipolar. And so I was a ticking time bomb, right? And my dad warned me about it. In fact, he had to punch me once just to chill me out, because I was so I was like crazy. And he literally punched me and split my lip and said, hey, you need to relax and calm down, get a hold of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Now you would breathe now.
Yeah. And well, yeah, I mean, to tell you, what actually happened? I mean, I remember it clear as day now. I came home from a rugby game. This was in 1989. And I went to watch the Sharks. And after the Sharks, we were, this is before I started, I just started studying, right? I was 88. Let's give some context to the listeners. I come out of the military December 87. I fly straight from Angola into South Africa. A couple of days later, I'm on the parade ground. The general of the army comes up to me, pins some medals on my chest, shakes my hand and says, thank you for your service, young man. Have a great life. I go home. My parents pick me up. I walk straight into my parents' flat, straight to my father's liquor cabinet, pick up the biggest bottle I could see, went into my bedroom, locked the door, drank myself to sleep. Did that for 6 months. In July of 88, I bumped into a friend of mine. He introduces me to Think and Grow Rich. He was also in the military. He said, hey, where you been? I said, been all over the place in the military. He said, me too. He said, I was a medevac flying into Angola and taking the wounded soldiers back to one military hospital in Pretoria. I said, I was on the front line of that operation. He said, what? He said, how did you survive? I don't know how you survived. He said, come with me. Went up to his flat. He introduced me to Think and Grow Rich and psychology and processing, how to process and significant emotional events is what he said to me, SEEs. I never heard of that before.
Yeah.
He said, do you understand psychology? I said, I never heard that word before. Psychology. He said, how you process the world around you. And he said to me, what you need to do is start reading so that you can begin to absorb new information and then notice what you are thinking on a daily basis. Notice when you get triggered. And he said, carry a notebook around and make some notes, and also make some notes of what you're reading and carry that book around so you can refer to it whenever you need to, whenever you find yourself going down that rabbit hole. So he was...
Good advice.
Yeah, great advice. And you know what he said to me, Marcus? I'll never forget him, Malcolm. He's one of my angels. He's no longer on this planet anymore. Several years later, he was killed in a car accident. Bless his soul. However, I felt his presence on stage many times when I talk about him. And what's amazing? If I show you a picture of him later, he looks like a young Tony Robbins. It's incredible. And he said to me, he said, Allan, when you read this book, Think and Grow Rich, he said, read it as if the author is sitting right next to you and he's telling you the book, you're not reading it. Imagine he's talking to you. That's how you want to absorb it, right? With that kind of attention. I never forgot that.
Great advice.
I never ever forgot that. And so I've always read books like that. And it triggered it triggered an academic aspect in my brain that I never knew I had. And suddenly I recognized I had this great memory. And I could remember these passages and these quotes and these phrases. Anyway, long story short, 89, I come back from, I'm at a rugby game, watching the game. And we go to the tent afterwards where all the players are, and all, it's like VIPs, etc. And one of my friends who I grew up with, went to school together, played rugby together, brilliant rugby player, amazing rugby player. He was the reason I was in the tent. And bless him, at the time, he was the kind of guy that didn't want too much attention, unwanted attention, because he was worried about what other people thought. And so he said to me, calm down a bit. So I said, why? He said, because, just a bit loud. I said, mate, just let me be. Yeah, I'm just being myself. I'm not causing any problems. And then we got into a little bit of an argument. So then I left. I said, fuck you, man.